Yeah, I have a gaming PC that I built a long time ago. It's got a GTX 1060 in it, I believe, NVIDIA. So it's just big enough to run an LLM, 6 gigabytes of VRAM, and it's very old though. I don't know when the 1060 came out. I never use it because I don't really play games anymore. Let's see, release. Oh, 2016, so 8 years, almost 9 years old. Um, and I downloaded. I wanted just a local LLM, AI to run. So that's why I started this project. I downloaded Ollama, which isn't an LLM itself, but it's a way to handle LLMs. So it's a script that pulls down several containers and to run a model, you just type Ollama run and then the name of the model. But you have to download the models, and you can download them from the Ollama webpage, and it's a CLI interface. And then so I downloaded an uncensored model. They have uncensored models that don't have any bias or anything like that in them. And those are prefixed by the word dolphin. So if you find a dolphin model on Ollama, those are uncensored models. And like you could ask it, I posted some screenshots like how to make crack cocaine, how to steal a car, and it'll tell you, no hesitation. Except at the end it'll say, I recommend you don't do this because it's illegal. But there's some screenshots in the matrix room of some different questions I asked it. But it worked pretty good. It was reasonably quick. But it really taxed my GPU, and that's an old GPU. And then I downloaded Open Web UI, which is a tool to give yourself a browser interface. And that's all container based. And you just set it up to run as localhost, and then you can proxy it if you want to access it from outside your land. And so and what's cool about Open Web UI is you can pull down models from the browser to your PC, or you're running Ollama, and you don't have to do any kind of, like, if you wanted a model just for coding or stuff like that. The kind of rule of thumb is however big the model is in gigabytes, that's how much VRAM you need. So on your GPU, or else it'll run CPU bound and it'll be like super slow and it's not very accurate. And it takes forever to get an answer back and stuff. So I have 6 gigabytes on the 1060 Ti, GTX 1060. So I downloaded the Dolphin Llama 3, I believe, which is an uncensored version of Meta's Llama 3 model. And that was 4.9 gigabytes. And so I think the actual VRAM was 5 point something gigabytes. So it was just small enough. And that's the smallest model. 8 billion parameters, I believe. So I was running that for a while, and it was cool, and I proxied it, and I could access it from work, and I used Wake on LAN to wake up the computer and stuff. And let me put the links in the show notes real quick. So I'll put Ollama in there, and Open Web UI, which I definitely recommend you use Open Web UI if you're gonna have a local Ollama model.
Ollama's on FlatHub, and I tried to install it, and it didn't really do anything. Like I kept trying to get it to download models, and it just like I would click elements in the UI, and it just didn't seem like it
Oh,
actually
really?
functioned
So I
properly.
didn't know
So
there was a GUI for it. The one
yeah.
I downloaded was just a download to because I installed Debian 12 on that computer, and then when I installed Ollama, it started pulling down all these NVIDIA drivers. It detected my card and stuff, uh, and I could run it from the CLI, and then Open Web UI I downloaded and installed, and that's just I believe that was a script too. Yeah, and that's all container based. So you have to have Docker installed.
Okay.
But and there's a quick start on the link, and that's how I did it. And actually, the only thing I had to do is it install the CUDA version. So there's a CUDA and an Ollama version, and since I was using NVIDIA, I guess the regular Ollama version is for integrated GPUs or for AMD GPUs. So I installed the CUDA version, and it's just a Docker command, and you can restart it via Docker, and then Ollama you restart via system control. And so anyway, it was working great, but there's a tool you can download called NVTop. So if you have an NVIDIA GPU, it's like HTOP for your GPU, and it'll show you the temperature and the how much memory it's using and cycles and stuff. And so every time I would ask it a question, it would just fucking max out the GPU. and I noticed it was getting hot, so I took the case, or I took the side off the case, and I had a little USB powered fan blowing on it. But even that was not enough, because the case is not a mini ITX, but it's whatever's one down from regular ATX, mini ATX or micro ATX or something like that.
I think it's mini ATX.
Yeah, that's the board that I'm running it on, so it's just enough space.
Yeah, micro only comes in ITX.
Yeah, so maybe this is mini ATX,
Yeah,
but there's no room in the case for any more fans or anything. And so I knew I was going to have a problem with heat, because I did when I ran it a long time ago with just playing games. And this was like really, really taxing the card hard. So I noticed that one day answers took like minutes to get back, and I looked and my GPU was no longer being detected. And so I ran just regular top, and every time I would ask a question, it showed my CPU was being maxed out. And I thought, oh, damn. So I messed around with it and tried different configurations, and I hooked up a monitor to it, because the HDMI of the GPU goes out the back, and nothing would come on the monitor, and there was a weird smell coming from the from the case. I realized it just smoked that GPU.
Magic blue smoke.
Yeah, I never saw any smoke, but you could smell something weird. And so it just it's a very, that's an 8-year-old card and this very tight fitting system and stuff. So my LLM experience didn't last very long, because it was too taxing.
Was it just a general curiosity, or I apologize if I missed it?
Well, what I wanted to do was I was researching this concept called RAG, RAG, and what it is, it's you're not retraining a model really, but you are. Let me see if I can find a link. Actually, all this started from the register, the website. I'll put the link. I found this article. It's called. I'll put it in the show notes right now. It's called "A Practical Guide to making your local AI chatbot smarter from rags to riches. And RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And what you're doing is you are kind of teaching your model via prompts. So that link shows you how to basically deploy Open Web UI, which is where I found out about that. And so you can say, you add documents to RAG uses a vector database, and all this is accessible through the Open Web UI. You can upload documents. So I don't know if I talked about it on the last show but paperless NGX, I installed that recently, and that's just a document server where you upload you scan your paper documents and upload them to your server. And are you talking to us, Eric? Oh, okay. And it runs OCR on the server so that you can search just any string you want to within paperless NGX, and it'll pull up the documents, the PDFs. And so I thought, man, that would be cool if I could make an LLM that was based on my life, basically. Like I could ask them, what kind of procedure, because I've had all these kind of medical stuff going on, but I've had all these questions from doctors and stuff, and I could ask, the LLM, what all did I have done in 2020 or 2019 or whatever, did I go to this doctor or this hospital, and based on this RAG implementation, it could use all the documents that are uploaded to answer those questions by referencing the documents I uploaded. Now, when you do it this way, you have to tell the LLM what the document it is it needs to find to generate that answer. But there's a way you can do it with prompt engineering where you say, okay, I had a procedure in 2019, and then you use a hashtag and you reference the document.
Was that your sex change operation?
Yes, that was my transition. When I transitioned from a boy to a man, and but
is that what your boyfriend called it?
Yes. Anyway, so now you may not lose my train of thought, you dickhead. So what was the time? Anyway, so you tag your document within the prompt, and it finds out, okay, I'm referencing this document, and it can pull the info from that document and say, okay, this is the doctor and stuff like that. But you save those prompts, which is kind of the beauty of RAG and Open Web UI, is it can save those prompts. So next time you can ask it, okay, what did I have done in 2016 without specifically referencing that document? And because it's saved all your prompts, it can tell you, okay, you've had, so-and-so done. And it just, that's how you're kind of prompt engineering along with RAG, R-A-G, to kind of train your LLM. It's not training it in the traditional sense, but it's using this prompt engineering in your own documents to kind of bypass the traditional training of LLMs that takes, I don't know, it takes a ton of processing power for something like this. But it's a way around that where you can do it locally and build an LLM that knows about your life and can answer, questions regarding not just whatever medical stuff you had going on, but just anything, bills, all that stuff, and keep it all local, so you're not putting all your data out there on some cloud service. So that was the impetus when I saw this RAG article to build my own LLM, and so that's what I did.
That's cool.
Now with ChatGPT, you just have the LLM, right?
Yeah, but from what I understand, you can do RAG with ChatGPT too if you pay for the service.
Because I
And
know, like Stable Diffusion, I know that you have like you have the checkpoint, and then you have like LoRa's you can add to it, and other things that you can do to kind of focus it in. Like the checkpoint is more of the broader spectrum, and then the LoRa is kind of like refocusing it in from there. With ChatGPT, you just have the llamas, the LLMs.
I think it's
well,
similar to what you're saying. Like it's a overall model, and then like Danny's saying, like you give it
The RAG is the focus.
The RAG is exactly. It's
Okay.
like this is the data set
cool.
that it's. Yeah.
Okay.
So think about the chatbots that some companies have implemented, where they use it like they'll put in all their data, FAQ data or their knowledge base data, and then when you ask it questions, it's supposed to stay within those guardrails. But of course, they've shown where sometimes it can decide it's going to go a little haywire. But
when you're doing something like that, wouldn't it be smart enough to just create it just based on your FAQ? In other words, you're almost so it doesn't diverge into other things. Wouldn't it be smart enough just to create the LLM and then just have the LLM as opposed to having a separate LLM and then having a focus?
Well, I think the LLM is what gives it the general sort of capability of language, if you will, if you want to call it that, the statistical probability of like what word should come next.
You need some kind of weights in there.
Yeah.
Like autocomplete almost to know
so
how
it's
to
kind
speak
of like
to a human being.
Okay. Yeah. So it's sort of like the capability model, and then you're putting a chunk of data on top of that.
So
that it's. Yeah.
So where mine was really being stressed is as I was uploading documents and referencing them. That's when I think I really was pushing the card hard because it was having to, in a way, comprehend the documents I was talking about, and then it had to, I hate to use reason or figure out because it's not smart, it's not intelligent like a human being, but it uses a lot of processing power to find out what I'm trying to ask it in reference to my documents. A lot more so than I'd just say, how long is a train ride from Baltimore to Cleveland or whatever, It would just, that used hardly any processing power. But when I started referencing my own documents, I think that's where I think a local LLM will really shine as far as a chatbot, is when you build it so that it's actually useful to your life situation rather than just answering questions that you could find on the internet, So that was the whole purpose of my kind of experiment here. But I was looking at like bigger cards, like the 16 gigabyte GPUs, and they start around $400 to $450, and I thought, man, that's an expensive experiment, because I'd really need to build a better computer that has more space and airflow and stuff like that too, because that's just a i3 and it's 16 gigabytes of RAM and then barely enough space for that card, and it's all packed in there and stuff. And so I thought, if I could come into a lot of cash one day, it might be another get back into. But for the little week I tested it
how's
it
the
worked.
3D printer running?
I was going to say it could be your next 3D printer.
Yeah, it could be my next 3D printer. 3D printer was running great. I'm sure it runs great.
But you haven't printed anything yet.
No, I haven't printed anything yet. I've gotten distracted by AI, which I think that companies that are I wanted to bring this up. The way companies are all rushing to get AI integrated into their products and stuff, I believe that they're doing it they're not doing it the right way. Like, they're doing it just to do it. Let me put it that way. Does it seem like that from you guys' perspective?
How are people integrating them?
They're just throwing it out there.
I think the throwing it into as a digital FAQ isn't bad. I think it's taking away jobs from some schlub sitting in front of a computer. But if you can accurately set it up so that you just type something in and then the chat GPT sends back something from like the FAQ or something about whatever it is you're trying to do, I think that's fine. I don't know how other people are integrating it.
But I
There's
think they're just trying to shove it in. Like I think CFOs and higher ups management just hear the word AI and they're just like, oh, we
hype.
have to get this integrated
Yeah.
in our product any which way we can. When
Yeah.
there's really a lot of times their use cases are not necessary. You know, they're just. I think it's a hype thing. What are you saying?
Even better than that is products that are doing the same thing today that they did 3 years ago, all of a sudden now claim that they're using AI in some way,
Mm-hmm.
which is completely bogus because they're not doing anything differently than they were before. They're just now all of a sudden saying, oh yeah, the stuff that happened in the background before where, you know, it wasn't hyped up as AI, that same exact process we're now claiming is AI. But when you look at integrating, you know, there are sort of soft integrations and, you know, where let's say you have an app, I don't know where, like I use a website design tool where you can put in like headlines and like different sections of a web page, and their integration of AI is if you needed help coming up with a clever title, rather than needing to go to ChatGPT or something, they just have a way for you to type something in and then invoke it right from there. So that's a pretty soft integration. They're not really doing anything to transform the experience of using AI. They're essentially just they're implementing that existing capability basically via an API call into a field that's already in their application. So there's not really much they're doing there, but there are companies that are doing more transformative things where, yeah, they might still use the API to kind of have the ChatGPT backend, but then they take the output of it or the UI that they're using for you to interact with is somehow fundamentally changing the way that you either experience the AI itself, it's not just a chat and response kind of a thing. It's more focused, depending on the task. That it's more sort of like task oriented instead of just open chat. And I've seen some systems like instead of using ChatGPT, they can't really give you any kind of a reference, to say like, where are you getting this information? Excuse me. I use this one called Perplexity, which uses the LLMs, but then it also will give you credible sources for where that data is coming from. So if you ask a question, rather than just getting a paragraph back that you have to kind of take it on faith that it is a valid statement, like, which it may very well not be, you can actually sort of click after each sort of factual statement and say, okay, this came from this source or this came from that source. And then, so it sort of self validates versus that. I mean, that's really kind of my problem with it is I've done some testing where I will ask Gemini a question and I'll ask Copilot a question and then I'll ask, ChatGPT 4. They're just different systems, different question, the same question to see how consistent it is. And the truth is that they are not consistent. And in a lot of cases, they are completely inaccurate. Whether we call that sort of fabrication or daydreaming or whatever kind of nonsense, amorphization they want to put on top of that, like they're just not accurate. And so I was saying that to someone I know, and he was basically saying, well, you're not really using and these AI systems, these large language models, and really in the way that they're designed. So if you're asking factual questions, like questions where you expect a succinct factual answer, that's not really what they're good at. they're better at sort of formation of language, using statistical probabilities. And basically what I mean by that is, like, if you were to ask it to summarize something, it's really good at that. If you were to ask it to come up with 5 different ways of saying the same thing in different ways, sort of variations of something, it's really good at stuff like that. So there are some things that it's like very, very accurate with and very useful with, but just regurgitation of factual information, it's kind of shit. Like, it just doesn't do a good job at it. And so and that's the problem with the way that the search engines in particular have been presenting this or portraying it, is that it can do that. And that's why these hallucinations are a problem, because it's kind of a misuse of the way that the system actually fundamentally works. It's not just like an indexing system that has this large corpus of data that has been indexed to the point where you can just put in key phrases or terms and it's going to go and pull, specific chunks of pre-created information, existing information. It's creating this stuff on the fly. So it's like, which word is most likely to follow this word, so on, so on, so on, so on. That's how it's doing what it's doing, not getting a fact and returning that fact. So that's why it often is like just blatantly completely wrong. So anyway, that was kind of a rambly way to say, like, AI is actually pretty good in the integrations that people are making. Some of it actually works pretty well, and given the situation or the particular circumstance, but a lot of it is just hype, just so they can stamp it with doink AI, so. But that's not going to last for much longer. I think people are going to get just absolutely fed up with seeing and hearing AI.
Do you think this is, a lot of people are saying it's a bubble and it's going to bust?
Well, the other problem is there is not this exponential curve of growth in capability. Like what we have today in terms of the models, like ChatGPT 4 is already demonstrably worse than 3 in some ways. Like, and they even clearly state that. Like when you go to use it, it says it's not as good with certain tasks as 3 was. And part of that is the quality of data. In order for these systems to learn, to improve, to expand their capability, they need just copious amounts of data, and they're running out of data. Like there's not a lot of just low-hanging fruit in terms of just data hanging around. So now one of their strategies is to create data.
Yeah, that's the new models coming out are made specifically for creating synthetic data to train the other models.
Which we've already got issues with factual correctness and in terms of like usability with real data. And also the fact that a lot of now results you're getting from like search engines and a lot of the content on the greater internet is AI created garbage. It becomes like, this incestuous cesspool of like junk just being fed into the system, and it's churning and creating itself, and it just keeps getting shittier and shittier. Like,
especially if you're looking at how much postings are being made by chatbots or other entities whose job is to pollute the data stream that everybody gets.
Content farms, yep. All they want is clicks. That's it.
Yeah, there's predictions that in the not too distant future, a large portion of the internet is just going to be AI generated content, which is probably
I already
pretty
run
close
into
to
that.
now. Yeah.
Search for a recipe. Well, so even if you don't have AI generated content, the other major issue, if you've been keeping up with what Google, like, the supposed decline of Google in terms of usefulness because of SEO, SEO is essentially destroying the internet because nobody's writing content for human beings anymore. They're writing it for Google's crawler, you know? And so there's this game of like one-upping each other. You know, the SEO gurus come up with ways to fool the indexing to put their results higher. And a lot of that is just garbage content that has no relevance to a human being. And then Google says, well, no, we have to stop this trend because we're trying to preserve the, you know, the value and usefulness of these results to human beings. And it just is this constant cat and mouse game. And there's been a precipitous decline in the quality of links that you get. What, baby?
Oh, no.
What do you need?
Google is junk now. Have you? I'm sure you guys have searched for stuff on
Actually,
Google.
that lovely voice I just heard is the best data that I've heard this hour.
You rascal, you. Yeah.
Everybody say hi. Hi!
Google. I'm glad I use searching like C or X and G now because that fucking AI synopsis at the top of every Google search is just terrible.
Oh my
Not
God,
to
my
mention
wife
the
is
links it
livid.
spits out.
She hates that shit so much.
Yeah.
She's like,
I imagine
how
a
do I
lot of
turn it
people
on?
hate it, from what
Yeah.
I've heard. So I don't think she's alone. But anyway, so that was my big project. It was good. It was fun for about a week, and then it was over with in a blaze of glory. So I don't know. Maybe one day I'll pick it up again. We'll see. But if you have the GPU and you want to try it, it's not a difficult process. That article I posted from the registers, it links back to the original Ollama installation, which is real simple, and also how to use Open Web UI. And it's if you have a spare PC with at least 6 gigabytes of VRAM in your GPU, or if you have a Apple Silicon Mac, I've read that those are actually, if you've got enough RAM, those run LLMs pretty nicely, like 32 gig or more of RAM.
Now, will LLMs work well with the TPU?
I don't know. I think you'd need a specific model for TPU stuff.
Okay.
The
Because I was
all
looking
the
at trying to use TPUs for with Stable Diffusion, but they said they have at least automatic 111. The version that I was using wasn't set up for it.
yeah, if there was one that worked with like a Coral or something, that would be pretty cool. You wouldn't have to spend so much on a damn GPU. But
They got M.2 TPUs too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It'd be a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
I know Frigate works really good with TPUs, but that's mainly for image detection. It's not chatbots.